All right, so the day is here. We're finally gonna put this crazy motor into the car behind us. If we go back a little bit and talk about the original motor from the E90, which is the reason we bought the donor, because it was a running and driving S65 motor, we pulled that motor out of the donor car and sent it to Carbon. In order to build a motor like this, you need a really good core that hasn't been damaged. So you can't buy a blown up motor, you can't buy a motor with a rod bearing failure, you can't start at that point to get to a motor like this. So we went ahead and boxed up the motor, we sent it to Carbon. Steve Dinan started building motors in 1977 for racing, and he's always built S62s, S14s, all of those really legendary BMW motors. We've been a Carbon dealer here for a few years, and we do a lot of built motors with F10s and S85s. We knew the 4.6 was right because it just levels up a little bit from the GTS, and that's where we are with this build. So this motor has oversized forged pistons, it has a forged crank, it has Carrillo connecting rods. The bore's actually been increased up to 94 millimeter. The original cars are 92 millimeter. The stroke has been increased to 83 millimeter. The stock stroke is around 75.2 millimeter. So all of those components together are gonna raise the car to a 4.6 up from a 4 liter. In total, everything together on this motor is gonna make about 400 foot-pounds of torque and about 515 horsepower. We actually added a GT4 water pump to this, which is a really nice upgrade that they can do when they build the motor, because it actually comes already installed in the motor from Carbon. They also do an MLS head gaskets on both. This is exactly how the motor comes from Carbon. We've just taken the lid off. So next, what we're gonna do, we're gonna pull this out of the crate, we're gonna get it onto the subframe, we're gonna get the transmission on, and Adam is gonna build the DCT. We're gonna get all that mated together, and he's gonna start building up the motor, and then we have a bunch of modifications to go on. So that's enough talk about the motor. Let's get building it up, and I'll get out of Adam's way. So we had a lot of questions and DMs concerning what transmission we were going to run on this build, and we ultimately decided to go with the DCT. And the biggest reason is because all of the GTS cars were DCT, and we actually have the coding ability to code the DCT to act exactly like the GTS. So Adam just got through completing the full service of the DCT trans, and that includes replacing the clutch packs, obviously replacing the fluid. We use the DCTF from Motul. It's also all of the seals and filters, which this has kind of a pan on it. It has a side filter, it has a pan filter. It actually has a connector sleeve that also goes bad and leaks a lot on these transmissions, and it has the input shaft. This is all completed. It's all complete and done, and Adam's gonna get it on the S65 over here. We're gonna get it on the subframe and get it in the car. So I'm gonna get out of the way and let that go on. Adam is currently working behind me doing the finishing touches on getting the motor ready to mate to the chassis. Past couple hours, he's been mating the transmission to the motor. He's been doing some of the wiring that we can do, and while we have access while the motor's out of the car. Before we get the motor up in the car, I wanted to touch base on some really important parts for us here at PSI and also for this build, and it's the 4-piece kit from CSF. This is pretty much the high performance pieces that we use on supercharger builds, on built motor builds like this 4.6 liter behind me. And the 4-piece kit consists of the high performance radiator, the power steering cooler, the higher density oil cooler, and then also the transmission cooler. So it's these 4 components that really upgrade the E92, E90 M3s into where they need to be for supercharging and to go to the track. The other cool feature is it's all plug and play. So it literally, you take off the OEM and you install the CSF. It's all made to fit. There's no modifications necessary. It uses the OEM lines. They're just cool pieces, really high quality, and it really levels up this build. Now that we went over the CSF parts, I want to take you guys over and show you the transmission where it's mated to the motor. So the transmission's now on. All of the harnesses that we don't have access to, which is right here on top of the transmission when it's in the car, we're getting all that situated. We're getting all the lines and the cooler lines hooked up for the DCT. We're getting everything prepped and triple checking, so when this goes in, we don't have to take it back out again. So also, if you guys notice, this has the throttle bodies already mounted up. It has the engine harness mounted up, the secondary air system, all of these parts that we get on these motors before we put them up into the chassis. So now with everything together, it's time to get it up into the chassis. So it's been about 3 days since my last update. We successfully got the motor started, and we've been adding all of those special components that make this build unique in the engine bay and all throughout underneath the car. We're gonna take you through those here. First thing you guys can see is the eVenturi intake, which is the whole plenum for the S65, and also the intake elbow and the carbon lid and also the filter. This is a really nice mod because it changes the way that the intake sounds. It adds some harmonics to the already loud S65. It also adds performance. So there's form and function with the eVenturi. It also just looks really cool in the engine bay being all the carbon fiber. Another cool feature that you guys can see is we have a couple things from Future Classic which really dress up the engine bay, but they also have the function. This cap extends the capacity of the power steering reservoir. It also doesn't require a seal when you install it. So you just thread it on to the top of the OEM reservoir. It adds the capacity, but it also keeps the function of the measurement, which is on the stem of the cap, which is a really sick feature. This is also a billet aluminum cap, and the reservoir is also billet. Another Future Classic component that's here is the oil filter cap, which is normally plastic from BMW. This is milled from aluminum. It's also anodized black. Just add some dress-up components to the engine bay to make it look a little bit more aftermarket, less OEM. We've replaced or restored all of the OEM components that belong in this motor that make everything work. From the lines that you see here, we've cleaned the reservoirs, we've replaced anything we didn't like in here, all genuine parts from BMW, just to make it be everything we can see, everything that you can use, and mechanically is going to be brand new in the car. So that was a really important part of this. We just didn't want to put new aftermarket parts. We wanted everything to be new, and that goes from the headlights, a lot of these components with these rubbers, a lot of the seals on the car. Car's gonna have a brand new windshield in it, everything to make it be a brand new car the way it would have come from the showroom floor from BMW. So to pair with this motorsport engine, we went with a 300V 1060 from Motul, which protects engines like this at Le Mans, and high revving motors like this up to 8,500 RPM needs a special oil and needs that protection. We also are running the DCT-F fluid, also from Motul. The BMW standard fluid is really difficult to get, and we can get the DCT-F in 20 liters. We actually stock it here at the shop. We also are using the 75-140 in the diff, and this is a brand new refurbished diff from Diffs Online. We always fill it with the Motul 75-140. This is a brand new clamshell from BMW, and this holds all of the radiator, the oil cooler, and the condenser and everything in the front of the car. We also replaced the headlights. These are brand new headlights in the car. Moving around to the side, we repainted the gloss black mirror bases to match the trim. We've installed the glass. This glass went through a special refurbish process. We've just been working our way towards the back. The rear glass will go in, and then the quarter glass will go in. So let me get the car in the air and show you one more thing that we've done underneath. So in the spirit of the GTS, we went with a lighter weight carbon drive shaft from Drive Shaft Shop. This is custom built for us, built upon the platform of the original drive shaft that we sent off to them. It has a custom center support bearing. It's much lighter weight. It translates more horsepower to the wheels, and it replaces that old worn out high mileage drive shaft that was in our donor E90 M3. So next we're gonna fit up the Akrapovic full exhaust and get all of the components back underneath the chassis, all of the underbody, plug in everything, get everything torqued down, and we'll drive this thing tomorrow.